Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. We're going to talk about anime. We're going to talk about the anime industry, how it's booming, but animators are not making much money. We've talked about this a couple of times, couple of different videos about how weird it is to see things like Demon Slayer blow up the Japanese box office, but the average animator is not making much money at all. I mean, we're talking like poverty or sub-poverty wages, but anime is exploding. So the situation has gotten so bad, it's attracted the attention of the New York Times. Very interesting. Got to give a hat tip to Sarah, who I believe sent it to Geeky, who sent it to me, and Geeky's not in this video. She's got stuff to do. But we're going to talk about the very low wages in the anime industry and why people are so upset about things like High Guardian Spice, because High Guardian Spice is produced by Crunchyroll with money that was supposed to go to Japanese animation studios. Now we don't know what happened to High Guardian Spice, but that's why part of the reason why people are so mad about it, they're like, wait a second, we thought we were giving you money to give your existing animation studios more money because these people aren't making enough money, and you're turning around and doing Tumblr cartoons. What the hell is going on here, Crunchyroll? But we're going to talk about that. So before we get into it, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 179,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. It's appreciated for sure. Hoping for 200,000 soon. So here we go. New York Times. Anime is booming, so why are animators living in poverty? That's a damn good question, because that's the way the industry works. If you paid animators fairly, there would be a lot less animation. And that's the unfortunate truth of it, in my opinion. The workers who make the Japanese shows the world is binge watching can earn as little as $200 a month. Many wonder how much longer they can even endure it. So yeah, this is coming from the New York Times, guys. Not that they're a bastion of journalistic integrity. We know they take a dump on gamers every chance they can get, but I actually agree with them in this case. So business has never been better for Japanese anime. It's true. And that is exactly why Tetsuya Akutsu is thinking about calling it quits. He became an animator 8 years ago. The global anime market, including TV shows, movies, and merchandise back then, was a little more than half of what it would be by 2019, when it hit an estimated $24 billion. The pandemic boom in video streaming has further accelerated demand for shows like Pokemon and Ghost in the Shell, but little of the windfall has reached this animator. Though working nearly every waking hour, he takes home just $1,400 to $3,800 a month as a top animator and an occasional director on some of Japan's most popular franchises. And he's one of the lucky ones. Thousands of lower-rung illustrators do grueling piecework for as little as $200 a month. Rather than rewarding them, the industry's explosive growth has only widened the gap between the profits they help generate and their paltry wages, leaving many to wonder whether they can afford to even continue following their passion. I want to work in the anime industry for the rest of my life, he said. He's only 29. He's already burnt out, sounds like. He said during a telephone interview. But as he prepares to start a family, he feels intense financial pressure to leave. I know it's impossible to get married and raise a child. The low wages and abysmal working conditions, hospitalization from overwork can be a badge of honor in Japan, have confounded the usual laws of the business world. Normally, surging demand would, at least in theory, spur competition for talent, driving up pay for existing workers and attracting new ones. This is not what happens. That's happening to some extent at the business' highest levels. Median annual earnings for key illustrators and other top-line talent increased to about $36,000 in 2019 from $29,000 in 2015, according to statistics gathered by the Japan Animation Creators Association, a labor organization. These animators are known in Japan as Gengaman, the term for those who draw what they're called keyframes. So yeah, they would be the keyframe animators, and then you've got the in-betweeners. As one of them, Mr. Akutsu, a freelancer who bounces around Japan's many animation studios, earns enough to eat and to rent a postage stamp of a studio apartment in a Tokyo suburb. Hell, I'd hire him. We could hire him anyway. But his wages are a far cry from what animators earn in the US, where the average pay can be $65,000 a year, to more advanced work that pays around $75,000 a year. And look at the difference in quality. I just want to put that out there. Not that all Western shows are bad. I don't think all Western shows are bad. But there are more good anime series than there are good Western series, in my opinion, at this point in time. But a lot of those Western shows, let's be very clear, they're animated overseas by cheap labor. That's how it works. You get the showrunners in the US, they storyboard it or whatever, write it, and then they send it overseas to places like the Philippines even, or Korea or wherever, and they do the animation. Shows like She-Ra are animated overseas. Noelle Stevenson and crew do the storyboards. They ship it over to probably Korea to have it animated. So you've got that situation over there. So, this is kind of, I don't know if they're talking Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks people or what, but a lot of these shows are outsourced. Even the US produced ones. It wasn't so long ago that Mr. Akutsu, who declined to comment on the specific pay practices of studios he had worked for, was toiling as a Dauga man, the entry-level animators who do the frame-by-frame work, in-betweeners, basically, that transform the Genga Man's illustrations into illusions of seamless motion, and they get about $12,000. So what's going on here? And then there are freelancers who are paid less than that. The problem stems partly from the structure of the industry, which constricts the flow of profits to studios. Studios can get away with the meager pay in part because there's nearly limitless pool. Okay, this is important. This is what's going on in comics too. This is why you have people working for low page rates. The studios can get away with the meager pay in part because there is a nearly limitless pool of young people passionate about anime and dreaming of making a name in the industry. Said Simona Stanzani, who has worked in the business as a translator for nearly 3 decades. This is what happens in comics too. This is why you get companies that can pay people like $20 a page, because they just want to break into comics. So they're going to work dirt cheap, thinking that someday they're going to actually make a living wage, and most people that never happens. There are a lot of artists out there who are amazing, she said, adding the studios have a lot of cannon fodder. They have no reason to raise wages. Again, same thing as comics. There's no reason to increase the page rates, even though people have been pushing for unionization and all that, because the comic books aren't selling that well. And there are a ton of people who want to break into the industry. And if they're getting paid something, they're like, damn, this is awesome. I'm actually getting paid to do comic books. Vast wealth has flooded the anime market in recent years. Chinese production companies have paid Japanese studios large premiums to produce films for their domestic market. And in December, Sony, whose entertainment division has fallen badly behind the race to put content online, it paid nearly $1.2 billion to buy Crunchyroll. Again, the reason people were so salty about Crunchyroll, and when it came to paying animators, is we were always told that your subscription goes to paying these people more, that these animators are actually going to get more money, more of your money. Most of your money goes straight to the industry. So subscribe to Crunchyroll. Don't pirate this stuff, because we're going to make sure these people get paid. And then they turn around and they give us X-Arm and High Guardian Spice and all this other stuff. And people are like, hell no. Business is so good that nearly every animation studio in Japan is booked solid years in advance. Netflix said the number of households that watched anime in 2020 increased by half over the previous year. So they talk about these production committees. They're an ad hoc coalition of toy manufacturers, comic book publishers, and other companies that are created to finance each project. That's why you see so many credits now in these series. They typically pay animation studios a set fee and reserve royalties for themselves. So, the studios animating these shows based on these popular mangas, the studios aren't getting all of that. Obviously, it's whoever came up with the original idea. While the system protects the studios from the risk of a flop, it also cuts them out of the windfalls. Rather than negotiate higher rates for profit sharing with the production committees, many studios have continued to squeeze animators, lowering costs by hiring them as freelancers. Again, this is comics too. Everybody's a freelancer, everybody's a contractor. As a result, production costs for shows, which have long been well below those for projects in the US, have remained low, even as profits rise. Studios are typically run by creatives who want to make something really good, and they'll try to bite off way too much and be too ambitious. Oh, this is, the founder of Anime News Network and chief executive of Media OCD. By the time they're done, they have very possibly lost money on the project. Everyone knows it's a problem. Fortunately, it's so systemic that nobody really knows what to do about it. I don't know if anybody's even trying to do anything about it, because right now it's cheaper to have the Japanese animate stuff, and they outsource a lot of their stuff to the Philippines and China and Korea and stuff too. But it's cheaper to have Japanese production houses do the animation, and these US companies just, pocket all the money. I mean, it's a pretty cushy system that's set up, and anytime you build an industry on effectively, slave labor or, low rates, kind of like the comic book industry, you can't just suddenly raise everybody's pay without blowing up the entire industry. What would happen is they'd be like, okay, well, now we're only going to get a third as many animated series per year, which means there's going to be even less money to go around. That's kind of the reality of it. Like, the system works. When you have a thoroughly broken system, the system works because it's broken. Because if you actually gave people living wages, it would no longer work because the money wasn't really there to give them. That's comics. Comics, unfortunately, works as it does, and there are so many indie publishers and stuff because they can't really give people a much better rate, because some of these comics that people are working on are only selling like 1,000 copies in the direct market. It's crazy. It's crazy. They said the same is true of the punishing nature of the work. Even in a country with a sometimes fatal devotion to the office, the anime industry is notorious for its brutal demands on employees, and animators speak up with a perverse sense of pride about such acts of devotion as sleeping at their studios for weeks on end to complete a project. Sounds like EA. They said the long hours appear to violate Japanese labor regulations, but the authorities have taken little interest because it's just a bunch of weeb shit. Even though the government has made anime a central part of its public diplomacy efforts. So far, the national and local governments don't have any effective strategies, they said. So some animators are filing complaints and all of that. But Netflix, they talk about Netflix getting involved with WIT Studios. They're going to pay people, 10 animators are going to get $1,400 a month. Woo! $1,400 a month for 6 months. Many of the smaller studios are barely scraping by and don't have much room to increase wages. It's a very low margin business. It's a very labor intensive business that manages to adapt. The ones that manage to adapt are the big ones, the ones that are public. So Kyoto Animation, which unfortunately was a victim of arson, is known for eschewing freelancers in favor of salaried employees, for example. That's why it's even more tragic that attack happened to that studio, because they actually tried to do right by their people. But they're outliers. This is unfortunate, And I don't know if there's going to be a day of reckoning, especially with anime becoming more popular. But the thing is, they mentioned Netflix. Netflix was working with studios that paid very, very low wages in the Philippines. And again, if you're talking about, you can produce an episode of an anime for like $100,000 or whatever it is. I've heard 100 to 200,000 an episode. But if that were done here in the States or whatever, it would cost many times more than that. It's economics of it. These studios, there's no incentive. There's no incentive for them to pay these people more. The only thing that would work is if they said, yeah, we're not working for this anymore. You're going to have to pay more. If you want us to bust our ass for you, you got to make it worth our time. And because there are so many young creatives that are willing to work for those very low wages, and they can just burn them out by the time they're 30, I don't think it's going to change. I appreciate people. I've seen some different. There was a Kickstarter project where they were trying to pay animators more. Hell, I'm sitting there like my gears are grinding. I'm like, geez, we could pay these people more. They could work for us. We could do Clownfish animation. That'd be cool. But until the people doing the work get fed up enough to say this just isn't worth it anymore, it's not going to change. Unfortunately, maybe if they offered some sort of like performance incentive or something, like, hey, if this series does X number of dollars, we give you more money, or a pizza party or something. I don't know. But there it is, guys. If you're thinking about moving to Japan to become an animator, you might want to rethink that. You literally could do just about anything else and make more money. I'm going to wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.